Discover the inspiring moment. A black CEO's seat was stolen, and how 200 passengers were grounded. Evelyn Carter felt the weight of eyes upon her as she approached the terminal gate, each step adorned with purpose and a subtle tremble of trepidation. The Chicago-born CEO was not just a woman at an airport. She bore the legacy of her family's sacrifices and the weight of expectation that came with her success. Her heart raced, every beat echoing the significance of the meeting looming ahead in Silicon Valley. This partnership with a tech giant could elevate her company, transform the industry, and manifest decades of her hard-earned resilience. She was ready to stand tall and prove her presence mattered in a sector littered with barriers. But as she neared her assigned seat, her stomach twisted. A white executive, a figure too familiar to her, parked himself in her spot, his suit glinting under the overhead lights like a shield. He looked at her with arrogance etched on his features, unconcerned about his audacity. It was more than a mere seat. It was a statement, a presumption of entitlement based on color and status, unmasking the casual disregard for years of toil and struggle she had endured. Her mind raced in response. What should she say? Should she confront him directly or silently acquiesce, as many had encouraged her to do? Heart issues coiling tight in her chest, a simmering rage ignited within her, a familiar fight against a repeated injustice. Evelyn's thoughts flickered through years of her upbringing. Her mother's insistence on education, Ms. Johnson's mentorship that shaped her into the indomitable figure she was today, relentless challenges that forced her onward. "You have a right to take your seat at the table," echoed in her mind, pulling her back from the brink of indecision. The murmurs of passengers around her, the sudden hush that followed this breach of decorum, added pressure, morphing into a chorus of anticipatory whispers, sensing potential conflict. The tension was thick. Their gazes mirrored her inner struggle. Should she forgive this affront, or should she speak out in defense of herself and, in effect, for others like her? The next few moments stretched into infinity, her indecision punctuated by the executive's dismissive smirk. Every second weighed heavily, the history behind her, the futures at stake. She envisioned the boardrooms already buzzing with the prospect of her partnership, knowing that one misstep could shatter her chances. She could fight him now, but what would it mean? Internal barriers pressed upon her, anger battling with vulnerability, pride rising against the fear of backlash. Time seemed to pause. The flight boarding, her present self, colliding with a racially charged narrative of the past. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos.
And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue.
Fueled by feelings raw and red, Evelyn knew this was about more than just a seat. It represented the relentless fight against privilege that had come to define her career. She felt a stir within, a gravity pulling her towards change, even if just within this moment. Muscle tension coiled in her limbs as she crafted her thoughts into a strategy. The stories she could share, the weight of inherited struggles and the realities cloaked in discrimination, could ripple through the crowd. Passion inflamed her voice, and just as she steeled herself to confront her adversary, the announcement came crackling through the terminal speakers. A system-wide delay had been declared. The room fell silent, breaths held mid-suspend. Evelyn's heart thundered in her chest. This could be the defining moment, or the slip into hurried dismissal. Would she allow his privilege to silence her? The tension begged for resolution, each passenger a silent threat to the status quo of complacency. The fight for her seat, no, for her voice, had just begun. Evelyn's thoughts raced as the loudspeaker's announcement reverberated around her, slicing through the tension like a knife. The delay should have provided space for deliberation, but instead it condensed the moment into a pin-drop quiet, where all eyes seemed to converge upon her. The earlier anticipatory whispers transformed into an uncomfortable stillness, and she felt each gaze weighing on her like lead. The executive before her settled more deeply into her seat, a mere flick of his brows signaling his indifference. His smug expression reflected a distorted sense of superiority, compelling Evelyn to reconsider her approach. This was not just about the seat, she reminded herself, but about dismantling perceptions that had long confined her, and countless others, into shadows. After what felt like an eternity, the urge to respond clawed at her insides. "Excuse me," she finally found her voice, steadied by the intensity of her surroundings. "But you are in my seat." A simple declaration, yet it glowed with undertones of a confrontation she had refrained from voicing all too many times before. His scoff dripped with condescension. "I think you'll find that seat is mine now. Ever heard of the early bird?" Resentment flared deep within her, but a part of her sought the calculated wisdom instilled by years of navigating corporate dynamics. Engaging in a tit-for-tat banter could derail her ambitions. Surroundings swirled in a murky haze. She pictured herself crafting impactful presentations for partners who needed to see her strength, not just her grievances. Just then, another announcement chimed in, speaking of unexpected technical delays that extended boarding again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your patience." The voice faded into a drone as Evelyn focused on her decision. Could she leverage this moment of unexpected vulnerability? Inhaling deeply, she gathered her thoughts. "You know," she said, the words rolling forth with unexpected candor, "this moment isn't only about this seat. Disregarding another person's rightful claim, especially in the professional realm, creates an environment where barriers are reinforced." The executive shifted, caught off guard by her turn in the conversation. Passengers watched, curiosity mingling with disbelief. Evelyn could see it in their wide eyes and shifted postures that many felt her struggle in their bones. Every ounce of their quiet applause resonated, granting her a confidence that surged through her veins. "I've fought for every opportunity that my color and gender have historically denied me," she continued, sensing time reframing around her as she stepped further into the light. "And this moment is an embodiment of the battles I've endured. It is personal, but it's also systemic. The denial of my rightful place here is a reflection of a much larger issue, one that we all have a role in addressing." The murmurs in the terminal shifted again, moving from trepidation to palpable support. Her passionate declaration elicited a ripple effect, resilient voices rising amongst the passengers, murmuring their agreements, rallying in quiet solidarity. Was her moment transforming into a collective realization? But amid the thrill of what might be a pivotal instigation, a sliver of uncertainty crawled back. While this may have sparked reflection amongst her peers, would it jeopardize her partnership? A chilling realization solidified in her core. This confrontation, though necessary, could cost her professionally. As she weighed the potential backlash, she felt a pit of dread deepen. Yet a sense of awakening burgeoned alongside, the awareness that her voice had power, and in today's climate that power could be channeled. Taking her stand became a defining act, one that could set a precedent for future interactions, leading not just for herself but also for those who were yet to find their own voices. Suddenly her phone buzzed in her pocket, a reminder from her assistant for the scheduled presentation. The urgency spurred her resolve. If the stakes were high before, they had intensified beyond measure. "I am not going to be dismissed," she resolved inwardly, drawn into a deeper confrontation with not only the man before her, but the very system that allowed such a transgression. With her heart pounding, Evelyn took a step closer to the executive and met his eyes, determination settling into her posture. The fight for her voice wasn't over yet. It had only just begun. As the surroundings blurred into a whirl of faces and pseudo-support, one thing became painfully clear. The journey toward equity and acknowledgement was far from simple, and hers was a road paved with obstacles still to come. What choice would follow this act of defiance? How would the situation at the terminal play out as the consequences unfolded? Evelyn's heart raced as she held the executive's gaze, a silent showdown brewing beneath the brightly lit terminal lights. She had just crossed a threshold she never thought she would, and now the distance to retreat seemed insurmountable. Her fingers tightened around her phone, the buzz of the scheduled reminder grounding her in the urgency of the moment. Yet, as the fear of potential repercussions loomed over her like dark clouds, a newfound resolve began to kindle within her. She would not relinquish this hard-fought ground. "Every seat has a story," she insisted, her voice rising above the ambient noise. "This seat, my seat, represents not just my place in this room, but the places denied to so many others. If we cower to disregard and condescension, we perpetuate a cycle harmful to us all." The words felt invigorating, her chest swelling with a power that had long lain dormant. The executive blinked, the flippant facade beginning to crack. Beneath his smugness, she could sense a riptide of uncertainty. Perhaps he had underestimated her, or perhaps this confrontation stirred echoes of his own battles. Whatever the case, Evelyn felt the room's energy shift, an electric charge igniting the air as others leaned forward, intrigued. In that moment, the repercussions of her actions crystallized in her mind. Potential professional fallout weighed against the significance of this event. It became a stark moral dilemma. Was it worth risking her partnership at the firm for an immediate expression of truth? Demands of conformity clamored in the back of her mind, contrasted sharply with the stirring call for authenticity. This confrontation was no longer just about her. It had grown into something larger, a manifestation of frustration felt by countless professionals like her across industries. Yet the uncertainty rose like bile in her throat. What if she became a cautionary tale? To not speak up could validate the very foundation of this indifference, she thought. This inner dialogue spiraled into questions of leadership. The definition of a true leader lay in their ability to challenge injustice, not simply accept it. A middle-aged woman seated nearby, her auburn hair streaked with gray, met Evelyn's gaze with fierce encouragement. "You're right," she exclaimed, a twinge of rebellion in her voice. "We need more courage in this world." The woman's defiance sent ripples of agreement through the crowd, the comment sparking a chorus of murmurs that grew louder. What was once a passive audience was now galvanizing into an empowered collective. Evelyn shifted her weight, energy surging forth as she turned back to the executive. "This isn't just about me reclaiming my space," she asserted, meeting the baleful stare he cast her way. "It's about reinvigorating a sense of accountability within our industry. We must remind ourselves that each voice matters." The executive's confidence faltered, a deep crease forming between his brows. "This isn't your business to decide," he shot back, but the tremor in his voice was telling, defensive, desperate. The collective murmurs began to crescendo, and Evelyn felt their momentum bolster her stance. She seized the moment, knowing she was at the precipice of a shift. "No, but it's our collective business to challenge the lack of respect in what should be a professional space," she countered firmly. This was not just a battle of wills. It was a clarion call for change rippling far beyond her own aspirations. Yet the clock continued to tick, and inevitably her phone buzzed again, reminding her of pending expectations. The exhibition of discontent at her feet echoed her spirit, but so did the pressing reality of deadlines. What would her allies think if she walked away now? Would this moment of catharsis risk the very work she had fought to build her career on? Determining to maintain her presence, she finally broadcasted with clarity and intent. "We all have a choice to make in how we occupy space. I choose to stand firm. Who will stand with me?" The weight of her call hung heavy in the air, a pivotal challenge hurled into the abyss of ambivalence. Evelyn could hear her heartbeat echo in her ears, but as heads turned and faces softened, she felt confidence swelling within. This was her moment of truth not only for herself, but for all those waiting in the margins, craving acknowledgement. But with every moment she remained anchored in defiance, new questions festered in her mind. Could she maintain the momentum? Would her stance fracture her relationships, or create stronger alliances? It was time to confront the next layer of conflict, and the stakes were never higher. As the tension coiled tighter, the looming question hovered in the air. Would this act of courage forge a new path, or would she be left stranded, facing the consequences of an audacious stand? Evelyn's heart thrummed in cadence with a growing awareness. The doubts that once obstructed her thoughts were now being overrun by clarity and purpose. She realized with striking intensity that this moment was not just hers. It was a testament to every voice that had been diminished, every story unacknowledged. The executive sneered, but beneath the bravado, his defenses were beginning to falter. As murmurs of support filled the air, Evelyn seized the energy swirling around her. It transformed her fear into an unyielding determination. She could feel allies forming, their belief enveloping her like a protective barrier. The weight of expectations shifted. The risk was still substantial, yet the potential for genuine change was palpable. "I refuse to be silent any longer," she declared, her voice unwavering. "This is bigger than us. Until we grapple with our truths, our industry remains stagnant." The room crackled with a rebellious spirit, a surge of momentum giving her the strength to push forward. The executive's arrogance melted away as the hostility in the room began to shape a collective consciousness. His previous dismissal transformed into a desperate attempt to regain control. "You think a few shouts can change the system?" he barked, attempting to assert dominance. Evelyn's resolve only deepened in response to his disdain. "It's not just shouting. It's about accountability, responsibility, and redefining values. Values I hope you'll come to understand," she replied, her gaze unfaltering. As she spoke, she caught fleeting glimpses of the faces around her, some filled with skepticism, others shining with inspiration. This was more than a confrontation. It was a reflection of her inner struggle that had long been suppressed by the fear of displacement. She was not merely defending her position, she was implanting her vision of what leadership should embody. But a question lingered in her mind, accompanied by prickling doubt. Would this moment eclipse her professional life? The partnership, hard-earned, loomed like an uninvited specter in her thoughts. She could almost hear her colleagues, the whispers questioning her sanity. Despite this weight, the alternative, returning to mute submission, seemed far less tenable. With renewed boldness, Evelyn spun on her heels to face the crowd fully. "We are not just looking for a seat at the table. We need to reshape the table itself. How many of you are ready to join me in this challenge?" A chorus of voices erupted, resonating with courage. Strangers were rallying, their unity sparking a flicker of hope within her chest. For the first time, she felt like a leader, not because she had any title, but because she dared to voice a universal demand for respect and dignity. The executive, visibly rattled, stammered. In that moment, a brief second of vulnerability flickered across his face. Could it be that he, too, understood the ramifications of silence? What if he realized the need for transformation in the rigid structures surrounding them? Yet, as the back and forth escalated, her phone buzzed again, reminding her of her scheduled meeting. Each vibration was an urgent call back to the status quo, a reminder that the comfort of her daily routine was just a decision away. Could she abandon this pivotal stand? The dichotomy between professional safety and personal integrity became a turbulent sea within her. "Look where silence has brought us," she pressed, direct yet vulnerable. "We don't need to conform to mediocrity. Let this moment mark a real conversation. If it starts here, how might it grow from this point forward?" The challenge resonated through the crowd. Every voice began to murmur agreement as they too confronted their own uncertainties. Evelyn felt the tension tightening around her, a mixture of fear, exhilaration, and inevitable change. She yearned to know how far the tide would rise, the transformations that lay just beyond this daunting threshold. As the executive opened his mouth to retort, Evelyn felt adrenaline spike yet again. Would she find the strength to see this through, or would the world want her to step back into the shadows? The question loomed, heavy and demanding, as Evelyn knew there was no turning back now. With a surge of resolve, she readied herself for whatever would come next. The moment of truth wasn't here yet. It was just beginning. In the charged atmosphere, Evelyn could almost taste the electricity surrounding her. The executive's incredulous expression faced off against the collective hopes flickering in the eyes of her colleagues. Each heartbeat warped time, elongating the moment into an eternity of anticipation. Would her resolve carry her through, or would she falter under the weight of her choices? "Do you even hear what you're saying?" the executive barked, his voice cracking under pressure. "You think this is about integrity? It's about survival. Each of us has to thrive in this landscape." His words pulsed with the arrogance of someone clinging desperately to power, and Evelyn felt a renewed surge of defiance. Survival? Is that what we call this disconnection? A sterile existence, void of true engagement? She challenged, her voice growing in strength. I would rather live with purpose on an edge than in comfort at the bottom. The crowd shifted, palpable anticipation coursing through them. She sensed a transformation blossoming, the beginning of something magnificent, yet insecurities gnawed at her. How could she sustain this momentum, especially when faced with the weight of her own career aspirations? Would this stand alienate her from the partnership she so dearly coveted? Each deliberation sparked a harsh inner dialogue. What kind of leader risks everything in search of authenticity, blinded or illuminated? The fear of being cast aside stung sharply, echoing warnings from her early years when her voice had been labeled disruptive. She confronted the specter of that doubt head-on. Better to risk everything than remain silent. Change doesn't come to those who wait, she said, her voice wavering slightly before finding its strength once again. It comes to those willing to challenge the status quo. Look around. Every face here represents a shift waiting to happen. With each resonating thought, Evelyn reclaimed her stance, grounding herself. She realized this wasn't merely about herself, it was about revitalizing a culture drowning in complacency. She was beginning to find the values she wanted to advocate, the values that could redefine the corporate landscape. Would they rally enough to sustain the shift? What's next? A voice piped up from the audience, filled with palpable curiosity. It was a crucial question, one that offered her a lifeline amidst the chaos. As her mind whirled, she fought to discard the pantry of rehearsed responses. She needed authenticity now more than ever. No one was looking for platitudes. They wanted vision. We build together, she replied. We create an environment where every voice is recognized. We hold ourselves accountable and demand respect, wherever we fit in. The gravity of her statement was not lost on the audience. They were no longer just spectators. They were participants in identifying their shared path forward. Even as anxiety thudded in her chest, that anxiety spurred her will forward. Then a hollowness formed in her stomach. A realization swept through her mind. Her commitment to evolving her workplace wasn't merely professional. It was profoundly personal, harmonizing her ambition with her values. Suddenly she questioned the consequences ahead if she were ostracized. The ramifications could be significant. A backlash sullying her reputation, the potential dismissal from a partnership she had fought hard to achieve. Yet, what had she ever achieved without taking the leap? As she surveyed the fragmented faces, she wondered whether they were ready for more than mere casual camaraderie. Courage brewed in some, while self-doubt loomed like a shadow in others. Yet, in this crucible of uncertainty, festered an urgency to unite for something greater. What if we initiate a dialogue series? She proposed. Regular gatherings where we voice our truths and redefine what this organization stands for. Will you join me? The silence that enveloped the room felt heavy, yet each moment stretched with anticipation, the outcome uncertain. Conversations were stirring, conversations that could lead to genuine change. She could sense a shift, both in her and those around her. As murmurs of agreement began echoing through the room, Evelyn felt an exhilarating mixture of fear and clarity, a potent moment teetering on the edge of transformation. Would it be enough? And just as the flames of hope ignited once more, her phone buzzed again. This time the meeting reminder felt less like an obligation and more like a challenge. How could she reconcile her aspirations with this newfound daring? The questions hung in the air, poised and probing. In the midst of this whirlwind, a singular thought emerged. The journey was just unfolding, and a higher purpose beckoned. The crossroads had appeared, inviting her into uncharted territory. What awaited her on this path forward? Evelyn's heart raced as she stepped into the dimly lit conference room, a stark contrast to the bright energy of the previous gathering. The walls felt closer, the air heavier, and every eye in the room fixated on her with both expectation and scrutiny. The energy shift was palpable, and uncertainty danced on her skin. She had initiated a dialogue series, yet now the reality of what she had proposed loomed larger than she had anticipated. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steadier than the anxiety fluttering within. Each hesitant smile from her colleagues urged her forward. This was not a mere meeting, it was the inception of a movement. She faced them, not just the employees of a corporation, but potential architects of change. What I envision isn't just lip service, she continued, feeling strength seep into her words. We're proclaiming that our thoughts matter, that we can be more than just cogs in this machine. We are doing this together, not for the sake of our titles, but for our dignity. As she spoke, her thoughts flickered to the executive who had so brazenly dismissed her vision. His scorn had ignited something deep inside her, a recognition that the flames of complacency could consume a workplace's spirit. She couldn't let that fear extinguish her resolve. Creating a safe environment became Evelyn's focus during the meeting. She guided her colleagues to share their experiences, prompting dialogues about struggles, those unspoken burdens hidden beneath the fabric of their day-to-day lives. Voices emerged, raw and unadulterated, each story a thread of courage woven into the fabric of their shared identity. The fears and frustrations that had been buried began to spill forth, and along with them, a glimmer of possibility. Yet, behind the mesmerizing exchange of ideas also resided her own turmoil. The specter of negative repercussions lingered in her mind, a gnawing reminder that her colleagues were not the only ones taking risks. Her promotion felt further away, a dream suspended above her while she focused on nurturing their voices. Would the power players upstairs recognize her commitment to engagement as a strength? Or would they see her as the outcast she feared she might become? In that moment of reflection, clarity emerged, bright and unapologetic. This was not merely a professional risk for Evelyn. It was a deliberate redirection of her own journey. She realized she had to embody the leadership she advocated for, vulnerable, transparent, and truly empowered by the champions she was now inspiring. What matters isn't just what we speak about today, she urged, leaning slightly towards an attentive audience, but what we commit to tomorrow. Let's outline actionable steps, ways to ensure our voices aren't just echoes, but resonances leading to tangible outcomes. Ideas were tossed around. An array of initiatives formed the foundation of what could transform into a more engaged and purposeful culture. A mentorship program, workshops focused on emotional intelligence, strategies for accountability. Each suggestion sent ripples of empowerment through the group. Yet, just as the room hummed with animated conversation, her phone vibrated again. A stark reminder cutting through the camaraderie, displaying the name that had haunted her thoughts. The executive had requested a meeting. The tension twisted in her gut, an urgent collision of responsibilities and personal growth. Are we just too idealistic? The voice of one of her colleagues broke through her reverie, reminding her that not everyone shared her vision. What if the higher-ups don't want to hear us? Evelyn inhaled deeply. Society often rewarded silence and compliance, but wasn't it her responsibility to challenge that? Would she enable a culture of disengagement by succumbing to fear? No, she had rallied them here. Now she must encourage their perseverance. If we don't speak up, they'll never know we exist, she replied, conviction simmering beneath her words. Let's devise a method to capture our insights, present them clearly in our upcoming meeting. This is our moment. We need to ensure they can't dismiss our collective power this time. The echoes of agreement began to fill the room once more, but beneath the surface, doubt and determination entwined within Evelyn. She felt an urgency to take her insights into the executive meeting, yet a dread stirred in her core. What if this was a step too far? As the session closed and Evelyn said her goodbyes, the echo of the executive's name lingered like a storm cloud. She had sparked something monumental, but would she be ready for the tempest that could follow? The moment loomed. Confrontation was on the horizon. She stood at a precipice, her next move uncertain and fraught with both promise and peril. What awaited her in the boardroom where decisions were made? Would she succumb or rise? Evelyn sat at her desk, her heart beating in erratic rhythms as the minutes crawled toward the meeting time. The familiar surroundings of her office seemed oppressive now, filled with the weight of impending confrontation. Uncertainty curled in the corners of her mind like smoke, each thought a tendril flying off to dark possibilities. She had opened a portal for change in her team, but could she lead them into uncharted territory without losing herself in the process? Glancing at the clock, she forced herself to breathe deeply, willing her racing thoughts into a more manageable cadence. This was no longer simply a meeting about discussing changes. It was a crucible of transformation for herself and her colleagues. Today she would need to present not just ideas but a conviction to uplift and challenge a status quo that seemed rock solid. With each second that passed, the executive's reputation loomed larger, a titan ready to crush her enthusiasm underfoot. But there was strength in her knowledge. The dialogues she had facilitated were filled with voices ready to be heard. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about catalyzing a shift, awakening a realization that they could not remain silent. As she gathered her notes, Evelyn's mind began to race through the various outcomes of the meeting. What would the executive say? What agenda would he push? She projected his skepticism in stark relief against her own budding confidence. Each confrontation felt surgical. Would he minimize her ideas? Would he undermine the collective effort she had catalyzed? But rather than buckle, Evelyn resolved to harness that tension. It was time to pivot her mental state, transforming it from fear to focus. She reminded herself of what she had learned in her recent workshops about emotional resilience. She had to cultivate a narrative of empowerment not just for her colleagues but also for herself, as she shifted from the role of a cautious participant to an audacious advocate. She slipped the notes into her folder and stood, anchoring her thoughts in action as she traversed the sterile corridors toward the meeting room. Each step resonated with purpose, her intention sharpening with every moment. This was her chance to confront not just an executive but the ingrained doubt that had dogged her professional aspirations. Entering the boardroom, her senses heightened. The sleek, polished table reflected a gathering atmosphere thick with unspoken judgments. The executive leaned back in his chair, exuding a calm that only fueled the turbulence within her. Evelyn set her folder down firmly, claiming her space. "Thank you for making time for us," she started, her voice piercing through the silence that enveloped them. The executive's sharp gaze bore into her, yet she met it with unwavering resolve. She launched into her presentation, weaving together the insights of her colleagues, the narratives of struggle and the aspirations for a culture rich with engagement. As her words flowed, she noticed expressions shifted from skepticism to intrigue. This wasn't just data. It was a reflection of the humanity that existed within the organization. Her colleagues' stories became a chorus, their individual voices harmonizing into a powerful testament of what change could bring. They were not just numbers in a report. They were a community of professionals with diverse experiences aiming for a common goal. Yet, as she reached the climax of her presentation, a flicker of resistance sparked from the executive. "Do you honestly believe these sentiments can drive quantitative results?" he challenged, the piercing banter lingering in the air. Evelyn felt the quiver of doubt threaten to coil back around her mind, but she seized it. "What's the cost of silence, really? We need more than compliance. We need authenticity," she countered, fierce intensity threading her words. "Imagine a workplace that not only recognizes contributions, but amplifies them. The sky is truly the limit if we are willing to invest in our people." A moment of silence settled in the room, extending whenever the executive's brow furrowed deeper. Evelyn's heart thudded, the atmosphere charged with tension. Had she crossed a boundary or been exactly right at the edge? Almost as if sensing her internal struggle, her colleagues' supportive glances gathered like invisible armor around her. As the executive opened his mouth to respond, a sudden realization struck her. Perhaps this confrontation was not only an assessment of her ideas, but also a test of her own steadiness. Rising to the occasion was paramount. The thought hovered like a bitter taste on her tongue. She could either pivot away from this challenge or soar through it. What awaited her in the executive's response? Would he dismiss her renewed vision, or could he be persuaded to join her in advocacy? The weight of the moment hung heavy, teeth gritted against the impending reply. In that paused breath before resolution, Evelyn braced herself. This was more than an encounter. It was a choice to embody the change she sought. Would she initiate a revelation or witness a disillusionment unfold before her? The executive's piercing gaze bore down on Evelyn with the weight of authority, and for a fleeting second, the room felt like a net closing in on her. She inhaled sharply, her heart pounding a rapid rhythm that echoed the tension in the air. She had staked her claim. This challenge was hers to navigate. The executive finally spoke, his voice a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Authenticity is a noble aspiration, Evelyn, but what guarantees do you have that these voices translate into engagement and ultimately, results? Evelyn's mind raced. The layers of doubt began to peel away, revealing the resolve beneath. With respect, she replied, her voice steady. The strongest organizations are built on trust and transparency. Statistical engagement only tells part of the story. We must also nurture the emotional commitment of our people. She wasn't just fighting for a new approach. She was dismantling the fortress of complacency that surrounded them all. Yet, here was the pivotal moment. Not just for her proposal, but for herself. Evelyn felt the familiar tendrils of self-doubt creeping in, but she quickly steadied herself. This was not the time to retreat into insecurity. The executive raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet unconvinced. I appreciate your perspective, but let's ground this in reality. You will need to show me precedents, data that connects emotional engagement to performance. Anecdotal evidence doesn't wield much power in this discussion. A surge of frustration surged through Evelyn. She could feel the eyes of her colleagues on her, a mix of expectation and hope. This wasn't just about numbers anymore. This was about believing in what they had created together, a movement toward a culture that valued every voice. Do you see the irony? She asked, her voice rising, infused with passion. We are in an era where siloed thinking will only diminish our potential. When we cherish our people, when we understand their perspective, we unlock innovation, like the voices of those who daily contribute in unseen ways. The room shifted slightly, as if the air itself reoriented. Evelyn sensed a crack in the armor around the executive's skepticism. A flicker of vulnerability crossed his expression. Perhaps he too felt the weight of the questioning. Perhaps he was beginning to wonder what legacy he would leave behind. Evelyn, he began, his tone shifting slightly. You seem to intuitively grasp the fervor required for true transition. But do you have a plan? A tangible outline that can stem from this discussion? In that exact moment, Evelyn felt a rush of clarity ignite her thoughts. Yes, I can provide a framework. Picture a quarterly feedback cycle integrated into evaluation processes, much like a pulse check on our culture. We can track not just metrics, but deeper engagement indicators like participation in group discussions or voluntary mentorship roles. If people feel safe to voice authentic ideas, that will reflect back in measurable productivity. The executive leaned forward, the lines of tension on his forehead easing. Evelyn saw realization flicker like candlelight across his features. This was no longer an argument. It was a proposal drenched in intuition, underscored by the passion that she and her team had cultivated. But even as enthusiasm bubbled within her, doubt whispered still. Was she ready to be a visionary, to champion change with unrelenting commitment? Her heart raced at the prospect. Yes, she could be more than just a participant in this evolution. She could be the architect. Let me share more, she urged, drawing strength from the stories of her colleagues she had so carefully gathered. Imagine a series of workshops, not dictated from the top down, where every tier gets to voice their experiences and innovate collaboratively. This is where the real magic happens. As she spoke, the walls blurred, becoming less like hindrances and more like frameworks of possibility. Then the moment crystallized in her mind. She needed to showcase their collective journey, not as separate narratives, but as interconnected pillars of a new vision for the company. The executive nodded slowly, but uncertainty lingered like a shadow. Evelyn, we'll require a detailed proposal before I bring this to the board for review, he said tentatively, the gravity of the moment settling back into the air. You will need to back this with actionable insights and a solid plan. A wave of determination surged through her. This was the crux of her evolution. Her voice echoed with unwavering assurance as she responded, I will create something that embodies our aspirations and values. I'll ensure we're not just heard, but celebrated. The discussion had transformed into a partnership, but with this came another shift for Evelyn. She was teetering on the edge of discovery, about to uncover her ability to reshape company culture, a hidden talent she had yet to fully embrace. As the meeting concluded, she felt the embers of a new path kindling within her. What she had ignited today could lead to unforeseen transformations, not just in her career, but in the culture around her. Yet as she gathered her papers, a daunting realization set in. Implementing her vision would require facing more than just the executive's skepticism. It prompted a stirring question within, a challenge echoing through her mind. Was she truly prepared to confront the deeper systemic issues that lay ahead, or would this newly found spark fizzle out before it could light a fire of change? In that moment, she sensed the weight of the journey looming before her, and the tension coiled tightly as she prepared to step into the unknown. Would she rise to the occasion, or stumble through the dark? The answer was still unwritten, and destiny beckoned her to uncover it. The days that followed the intense meeting felt like a maelstrom swirling around Evelyn. Each minute was heavy with an urgency she had never before experienced. She dedicated herself to drafting the proposal, poring over every detail, every potential risk, and every necessary safeguard. Evelyn didn't just want to meet expectations, she aimed to surpass them. In the quiet confines of her office, the pulsating energy of her initial victory slowly transformed into an invigorating sense of purpose. With every word she crafted, she was forging her identity as an architect of change, embodying the very principles she championed: trust, transparency, and valor. Yet amid this fervor, she recognized the shadows loitering at the edges of her thoughts. Would her colleagues truly embrace this culture shift? How would she face resistance, particularly from those entrenched in outdated practices? That night, as the soft hum of her fluorescent office overhead drowned out the world outside, an unexpected wave of doubt washed over her. Was she about to lead a revolution? Or was she merely daydreaming? The insistent question clawed at her, stirring a tempest within. She needed to reignite that flame of conviction or risk letting it smolder into apathy. Determined to align her aspirations with her actions, Evelyn made a bold choice. She sought out feedback, not from the executive team, but directly from her peers. It was a decision born from her belief that their insights would sharpen her proposal and bolster her confidence. The thought of confronting their potential criticisms sent a fleeting shudder through her. Yet, she resolutely dialed into the group chat. "Let's meet tomorrow," she proposed, "to discuss ideas about how we can make our workplace more inclusive and engaged." The responses varied from hesitant agreement to initial anxiety about discussing sensitive topics. However, Evelyn was undeterred. She could feel the electricity crackling in the air, a sign that people wanted to be a part of this dialogue but perhaps didn't know how to start. The next day, the atmosphere in the small conference room felt electric with possibility. Colleagues trickled in, some clutching steaming cups of coffee and others still in business attire, their faces revealing a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Evelyn could see it mirrored in her own reflection, a heady cocktail of excitement and trepidation that sharpened her senses. As they gathered, she recognized the gravity of her undertaking. This was more than just a meeting. It was an invitation for voices long unheard to rise and resonate. With a steady breath, she introduced the vision she had distilled into her proposal. "I want to create a workplace where everyone feels safe to express themselves, to share their ideas and experiences freely," she began, her voice warming to life. The conversation began slowly, but soon it surged like a wave. Ideas emerged, insightful observations flowed, and vulnerabilities were shared. The discussions led to a realization. There was a communal yearning for change, an undercurrent waiting to be harnessed. They were all sitting on a treasure trove of insights and perspectives. Evelyn's heart raced with recognition of her own hidden capability as a facilitator of voices, both hers and those of her colleagues. As they engaged, she recognized their trust in her to lead this shift. It was a weighty responsibility, carrying with it both potential growth and an impending test of their collective resolve. Just when the session reached a peak of enthusiasm, a critical voice emerged from the back of the room. "But will the executive actually listen? Can we be more than just a checkmark on a corporate agenda?" The question hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the skepticism Evelyn had faced. Feeling the tide of energy shift, Evelyn replied without hesitation. We will show them the value of these discussions through data. Our metrics will speak for themselves. This isn't just for us. It's for the organization's evolution. But deep within, Evelyn questioned her ability to maintain momentum against a backdrop of skepticism. Her shift from an uncertain employee to a thought leader felt precarious. Would the executive truly support her vision? And more importantly, could she sustain this newfound paradigm against possible pushback? Even as these uncertainties pressed in, a whisper of defiance surged within her. Alone she might struggle. Together they would flourish. With this realization now burning in her core, Evelyn could see, though, the mist of doubt. The awakening had begun. The next steps felt daunting. There were significant hurdles ahead, and the prospect of navigating them alone seemed almost insurmountable. But Evelyn understood that facing down these challenges was essential if she was to truly embrace her unfolding destiny and forge a culture of authentic engagement. With that resolve ignited within her, the question loomed larger than before. Could she truly spearhead a transformation amid bureaucratic inertia, or would she fall victim to the very doubts she sought to banish? The answer awaited her in the chapters yet to unfold. Evelyn stood at the top of the glass staircase that led to the boardroom, her heart pounding in sync with the rhythm of her thoughts. She rehearsed the points she intended to make, her proposal now a living testament to her commitment to create an inclusive workplace. With the support of her colleagues fueling her confidence, she was resolved to turn abstract ideas into concrete action. The once sterile conference room took on new life as familiar faces filed in, each charged with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. As they settled in, Evelyn felt the electric atmosphere. This was less a meeting and more a rallying cry, a gathering of changemakers ready to redefine their workplace dynamics. "Thank you all for being here today," she greeted, her voice resonating with determination. "What we're discussing today is vital. Together we can forge a new path that honors every voice in our organization." Evelyn kicked off the meeting by encouraging her colleagues to share their insights and experiences. Their voices interweaved, creating a tapestry of ideas and desires that had long been left unheard. Each narrative added depth to the collective understanding of their professional environment. They all resonated with the shared truth that the corporate structure once stifled creativity and engagement. Together, they were transforming apprehension into a powerful narrative of unity. Imagine an environment where we foster mentorship programs, emotional intelligence workshops, and open forums for dialogue, both horizontally and vertically in the company structure, Evelyn articulated passionately, her conviction amplifying with each word. As ideas flourished, so did the realization of their mutual responsibility to ensure their message reached beyond the boardroom. They could present a comprehensive framework to the executives, not merely to be heard but to implement significant systemic changes. Hope burgeoned within Evelyn. She envisioned a collaborative proposal filled with actionable insights, backed by data and passionate advocacy. But as the meeting unfolded into a vibrant exchange of perspectives, the specter of doubt still shadowed her, but a different kind this time. It was not one she would succumb to. Instead, it incited her resolve further. "This means we need to establish metrics for accountability, ways to demonstrate that engagement leads to tangible improvements," she continued. Just then, one of her colleagues chimed in with newfound adrenaline. "We'll document successes but also setbacks. Authenticity means allowing space for failure, so we can learn together." "Yes," Evelyn reinforced. "It'll show that we're not just cultivating a culture of success, we're also committing to growth and reflection, something that's essential for any thriving organization." As the team brainstormed actionable steps, ideas flowed effortlessly, creating a sense of empowerment that invigorated Evelyn. The doubts that had previously haunted her began to fade into the background. She could feel a palpable shift of clarity within herself. The more she witnessed the unfolding excitement from her peers, the more assured she became. This was no longer solely her vision. This was their collective journey. Finally, Evelyn posed a challenge to the group. "So, who's ready to take part in drafting this proposal? We need to put our insights into a concrete action plan, one that the executive team won't be able to dismiss." Hands shot up around the room, a wildfire of enthusiasm igniting their spirits. She felt an overwhelming wave of solidarity wash over her. They had catalyzed a movement, a genuine desire not just for change but for a renewed honor towards their colleagues and themselves. In the days that followed, the team convened multiple meetings, culminating in a robust proposal, steeped in data-supported insights and narratives that humanized their corporate culture. The presentation would be about more than just numbers. It advocated for a workplace woven from respect and inclusion. On the day of the board meeting, Evelyn entered the room with a steady heart, buoyed by the indisputable strength of her teammates. As she prepared to speak, the executive sat with arms crossed, skepticism etched across his face, but Evelyn felt ready. She had information to share, stories to tell, and solutions to propose. "I'd like to start by acknowledging the resilience and innovation this group has displayed," she gestured to her colleagues. "Today, we present not merely ideas, but a compelling vision for our future, a vision rooted in community, authenticity, and shared responsibility." Evelyn launched into the presentation, armed with the proposal's data, interspersed with authentic accounts from her team. As she spoke, she watched the executive's countenance shift from skepticism to curiosity. Each word held the weight of her journey and the journeys of many others who fought silently for recognition. "Dismissing the emotional and cultural aspects of our organization limits our collective potential," she concluded, leaning forward, her voice firm yet passionate. "To thrive, we must engage heart and soul. We're here not just as professionals, but as a community striving to elevate our workplace experience." An expectant silence rolled through the room as the executive finally spoke, his voice reflective. "This proposal, though ambitious, has merit. If you can present a strategic plan of implementation, I'm willing to explore it further with the board." Evelyn's heart surged. The conversation she had envisioned was blooming into reality. This was what she had fought for. The acknowledgement unraveling before her was no longer just a fleeting dream. It was unfolding step by step, her commitment now recognized. In the weeks to follow, the proposal was approved, and the results began to manifest. Change was heralded within the organization, a renewed focus on inclusivity, an open forum established for dialogue, and accountability becoming a cornerstone of their culture. Beyond the operational success, Evelyn discovered something even more profound, a sense of belonging. She had not only reclaimed her seat, she had galvanized a movement to ensure others could as well. With recognition came confidence. She felt empowered to lead, furthering her career not just as a participant but as an authentic catalyst for change. The struggles she once bore like a weight were now the threads that connected and unified them into an inspiring narrative of resilience and growth. The past had shaped her, but the future was theirs to redefine. In this new chapter, Evelyn had not just achieved her goals, she had conquered the reservations that held her back. As she gazed out at her colleagues, she realized this was merely the beginning of a collective journey. Entering into a legacy of change, they were all poised to soar higher, reminding each other that every voice mattered. As the sun set on the horizon, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. It was a testament to her growth, a victory not won in isolation, but as part of a movement that would continue to evolve and inspire. With renewed confidence and established competence, Evelyn Carter had truly transformed, not only her workplace but her journey as an empowered leader. Now is the time for you to show your support for stories like Evelyn's. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional narratives that can inspire change in your life. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these transformative stories alive. We want to hear from you. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful ending, and let's create a dialogue. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this conclusion. This is your moment to spread the inspiration. Don't wait even one more second to support these impactful stories. Only true fans of personal overcoming experiences understand the importance of lifting each other up through these actions.